Hello, friends. Today, the topic that we are covering is a very important topic from the perspective of UPSC. And the topic is rights in India and the related issues, which is being covered by me, Orno Poti. Now, diving right into the topic itself, UPSC ने हमें जो syllabus दिया है उसमें in the GS2 का syllabus, they've only very vaguely mentioned the term rights issues. And this is what makes this very tricky. उन्होंने बोला इन तीन subtopics में. The first one is issues relating to development management of social sector services relating to health, education, and human resources. Then they said issues relating to poverty and hunger. And lastly, they mentioned welfare schemes for vulnerable sections. And uni mein they added the mechanism, laws, and institution bodies that are constituted for protection and betterment of these vulnerable sections. Now, what makes this so tricky is that अगर आप 2011 का ये क्वेश्चन देखेंगे ये बहुत ही फैक्चुअल नेचर का क्वेश्चन है. And in fact, if you want me to make a video on questions related to rights issues, which is coming from the 1979 onwards, I'll do that. But like the best thing that you can notice from here is the transition from what UPSC used to ask before, which were very factual based questions, to what they have started asking now. Like, look at this 2011 question, which talks very directly about Universal Declaration of Human Rights. In this question, if you have some working understanding, अगर आपको थोड़ा सा भी knowledge है ना यूनिवर्सल डिक्लेरेशन ऑफ ह्यूमन राइट्स के ऊपर, आप ये क्वेश्चन में एक educated guess ले सकते थे. But when we move on to say questions that were coming from this area, like for example in 2020, same, they picked up Universal Declaration of Human Rights, but they asked an interpretative question, which was which of these following sections in the Constitution of India have the principles or provisions of Universal Declaration of Human Rights other than fundamental rights. यहाँ पे भी एक certain base level of understanding की ज़रूरत थी हमें. But अब जब ये लोग question ये पूछने लगे हैं, where they've asked you that legal services authorities, they provide a free legal service to which type of citizens? Now, in this question, it's not really about this income bracket. It's about you having a little bit of understanding कि ये जो लीगल सर्विसेज अथॉरिटीज़ हैं ये करती क्या हैं, वेयर डू दे कम फ्रॉम, वेयर वर दे फॉर्म्ड, लाइक एंड देन गो अहेड एंड लुक एट दिस क्वेश्चन फ्रॉम 2021 which is about judicial custody. Now, a student is not expected to read a complete course book on judicial custody, right? Not everyone has a law background here. And similarly, in the same vein, they asked another question about the state governments and their own prisoners release on parole rules. Now, ये जो parole rules हैं, this might be the very first time a lot of you are like hearing or coming across the term parole rules. Now, in this situation में, what UPC is asking you to do is not to have just the basic understanding of rights. They want to know that if you've read polity, if you claim that you've read polity, then you should have a working understanding of what rights people have. And this is right now they've touched somewhere in the category of human rights and prisoners' rights and food rights, health rights, children rights. But what happens when they start asking about women's rights? Because that's a very hot topic. What happens when they start asking about refugee rights, about privacy rights? And that is where this whole idea of rights issues comes in. My reading of rights issues from 1979 till 2021 gave me these 5 very basic observations. And one of the most crucial observation was that this is a very hidden topic. And ये जो topic है, this is not only limited to हमारा जो prelims का exam होता है. This topic is very much ingrained in your mains examination. Like, if a question is being asked about gender empowerment, if a question is being asked about refugee rights, if a question is asked about tomorrow on citizen charter, on consumer rights, what do you do then? This is where I come in. I will be teaching you everything that you need to know from the perspective of rights issues. Now, my observations, like you see here, my first observation was, yes, this was a hidden topic, but more so that there is no course book or material that is available for this topic. Then similarly, अगर आपके पास अगर कोर्स बुक और मटेरियल नहीं है, आपको क्या करना है? आपको एक्टिव रिसर्च करनी पड़ेगी, आपको गूगल करना पड़ेगा, आपको जाके ये सारे राइट्स निकालने पड़ेंगे, उनकी प्रोविजंस पढ़ने पड़ेंगे. बट आज when we have less than 2 months going into the prelims examination, how are you supposed to do that? And similarly, another thing is that these type of questions where they've asked about judicial custody, they've asked about parole rules, and later on, whenever they'll start touching this topic, and you've seen that there is a trend. आज का जो trend है यूपीएससी का वो trend ये है कि अब हम factual questions नहीं पूछेंगे आपसे. We'll be asking you very interpretative, very analytical questions. And if you have a working understanding, again, the term working understanding is very important here. अगर आपके पास एक understanding है कि मैंने ये समझ लिया है topic, I know the provisions and rules that are coming under certain rights, then I'll be able to have an in-depth understanding of this whole topic. And this in-depth understanding can come if you have an in-depth understanding of the Indian Constitution, the Indian legislation, and the policies, alongside the international and judicial conventions that have come for those rights issues. Now, in this whole course of rights issues, I'll be covering these 9 very important rights, starting with refugee rights, then going on to right to privacy, and then following all these rights that you see here. And the way we'll be covering this is we'll have a certain we'll form a certain basic understanding about these rights that are there. What is the constitutional provision that gives legitimacy to these rights? Are there any laws or legislations made for these rights? And then move on to comparing it to any other international laws or obligations that India has to fulfill under these rights. Are there any other international bodies working in these rights at the global level? And then we will also discuss certain other pressing rights issues that are coming up now. Like COVID-19 has made this whole idea where education through distant mode of learning or health services has become a pressing rights issue. And that's how we are going to conclude this. This is going to be a series that'll be covered in the whole month, with small videos spanning from about 20 to 30 minutes. And in this, we'll have an in-depth understanding. We'll reach an in-depth understanding of what this topic will entail. And I hope by the end of this video, you'll not only be very proficient in answering all the questions that are coming from the rights issues, but you'll be able to write much better answers and perform really well when it comes to your UPSC interview. So thank you so much. Stay tuned and let's do this together.